Welcome to Shape by Faith, where we shape our bodies and hearts for God's purposes. My guest on the phone, Brian Smith. He is the owner of Diamond Lake Resort, the place to be for family fun. And Brian, I'm so glad you're on. I think you're on a few years ago when we talked about Diamond Lake Resort. Times have changed just a little bit. The pandemic, since COVID-19, the pandemic has shut down a lot of businesses, right? So,
yeah, it's been a really interesting time, and I really feel a very strong sense of sympathy as well as empathy for anyone that owns a business, particularly a small business that doesn't have a lot of reserves on hand. You know, it's a trying time.
It certainly is. Well, thankfully, Diamond Lake Resort's been able to stay open, right, as an essential, lodging establishment?
Yes. We're open because the government has determined that lodging is essential, and because we have hotels, motels, cottages, and campsites, plus we have a few permanent residents at the resort. It's been determined that we should stay open, and of course that's wonderful for us because, you know, if we're forced to close, well, then we know we're not going to make any money.
Right.
But if we're allowed to stay open, at least there's a chance that somebody will come out and spend some time with us. And boy, have we been blessed! It's just been a wonderful experience. It's been crazy.
Yeah, I cannot wait to hear about it. We talked a little bit before we started the interview. Let's talk about when you first heard the news, though, Brian, that the pandemic was shutting down several of the businesses. What was your initial response?
Well, it was really kind of a response of it was puzzling. I just didn't understand how it was going to happen. To be honest, I was on a road trip on my way home from Arkansas, and we discovered that as we stopped to eat meals, there were some that were closed and not allowing people in, and we thought that was kind of weird, and certainly it wouldn't get that way in Owensboro, and of course we all found out different a couple of days later, but I was in awe, to be honest, that the pandemic had caused us to shut down the economy as it was, and that's not my term; that's the government's term. But it was really one of just awe, and of course we prayed that we wouldn't be closed down, and of course that was really a blessing that we were allowed to stay open. And then, of course, we wondered if anyone would come or whether fear would drive people to stay away. And it's been anything but that. We've been sold out 4 weekends in a row and counting. And people have been very conscientious in their obeyance of the restrictions. And people have been very understanding of us. And, it's just every day, Janice, my wife, and I, we thank God that people have been so good to us and that we've been able to stay open and function at least partially.
Well, that's wonderful. And tell Janice I said hello. I tell you what, it's just a beautiful place, though, to isolate yourself in a campground situation. I mean, it really is, and I want to talk about that. What are some of the necessary changes you had to make regarding your campsites?
Well, there have been a lot of changes, and of course, most everyone is familiar with most of them. You know, our food is to go only. Which is an interesting challenge for us because we've never really emphasized our to-go food. It's always been available, but not very many takers. You know, most people come in and sit down and eat, and of course that's not allowed anymore. So we've had to change the way we procure supplies, and we've had to stock up on the to-go containers and things like that. And it's just amazing how many of those we've gone through. And then, of course, we're having to isolate and keep the distancing pretty accurate inside the building. We've had to reduce the number of people that we allow in any of our buildings. We've had to keep some of our restrooms closed because we're not able to sanitize enough to as many locations as we can because of manpower issues, and so we've kept I think 2 restrooms closed to allow us the time to sanitize the others properly. And then, we've got lines on the floor showing people where they can stand and all of that, which everyone's familiar with that if they're not completely isolating. Any business they walk into has that. And, we've had to keep our go-karts closed because of the sanitization issues and the distancing issues with the lines and queues to get into those. We've not been allowed to open our pool. Our pool is considered, even though it's on private property, it's considered a public pool. So we're not allowed to open that yet. And there's really, at the time we're doing this, there's no light on the horizon for that. I'm not sure if the pool will be allowed to open or not. And of course, that's a little bit, as we get warmer and more into the summer, that will become a bigger issue. We've already had it be an issue with a few customers. We've had some $30,000 worth of cancellations.
Wow.
Away, which is a bit of a staggering number. But, it seems that it's being countered by people that are feeling the cabin fever thing and wanting to isolate out here. Last weekend we had one of the Kentucky senators out here, isolating out here. And, it's just been a really good environment to do that. And by and large, unless they're living under the same roof, people are being really good about keeping distance.
Yeah,
so,
Yeah, go ahead, Brian. Well, I was going to say, I think people are really mindful now. I think at first it was kind of odd. It's still odd. I'm not saying it's not, but at first it's like, how do you do the social distance thing and standing on a piece of tape 6 feet apart, and in the grocery stores, arrows going down. I still get confused when I'm at the grocery. I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot there was an arrow on the floor because I'm just not used to that. But I think for the most part, what I've seen, Brian, out and about in the community is when I'm in the grocery, I'm not seeing anyone disgruntled or really openly upset or anything like that. I think everyone is kind of complying by the restrictions. Now, that doesn't mean we like them, but I think everyone is doing that in a very calm, considerate way. Yeah, go ahead.
I think that it's wearing thin. I think, unfortunately, the media has really turned this into a political football, I think, and not wanting to get political, and I won't. But I think that that's making it wear thin on people, and people are getting a little bit tired of all of this, and understandably so. And I think maybe the amount of information that we get, I guess you could make an argument either way. Either we don't have enough information or we have too much information. But
or we're not being told the correct information, maybe.
Yeah, I think people are grumbling a little bit, but they're keeping it to themselves. And, any more of the common answer when you ask somebody, how are you doing today? They just go, oh, it's kind of become, this passing thing that hopefully will pass and go away. But I think that we're in for a new normal that no one anticipates. And I think distancing is here to stay. I think it'll be a long time before we ever see a buffet restaurant functioning the way it did before. Mm-hmm. And I think you're going to see servers at restaurants wearing masks for a long time. Those are just my opinions, but, we all have our own opinions.
Right. Okay, let's take a break. We'll be right back with Brian Smith at Diamond Lake Resort. Everyone stay tuned. Welcome back to Shaped by Faith, where we shape our bodies and hearts for God's purposes. On the phone is Brian Smith. He's the owner of Diamond Lake Resort. I'm so glad we're getting to talk, Brian. It's been a few years, and times have changed a little bit because of the COVID-19 and the pandemic. We were talking about how it shut down a lot of businesses, but your business has been able to stay open. You talked about, that you've been booked out, for 4 weekends in a row. People are coming out there. They're camping. I think they love the great outdoors, and it's absolutely beautiful where you're at. I wanted to ask, how hard is it for you? What are some of the challenges that you face as a business owner?
Well, that's a great question. First of all, let me say thank you for inviting me to be on with you today. I always love getting the chance to chat with you, so thank you for that. And the challenges are not so unusual to anybody. The challenges are, from a business standpoint, it's difficult because not everybody thinks the same way the government thinks or the way I think. And so we've had to deal with a few people that didn't. I call them haters, but they aren't haters. They're just people that have a concern, and they call us and are very vocal about how they don't feel like we should be open.
Oh.
And so trying to explain to them why we've been allowed to stay open, and it's difficult to change a mind, but we just want to enlighten people and let them know why we've been allowed to stay open. Mm-hmm. And then the other issue is procurement, and by that I mean buying our supplies. We have a grocery store out here, and we have a grill and a pizza parlor and lots of things that require products to be offered through them, our food and things like that. And getting simple things like eggs. We serve breakfast every day, and we'll go through, 5 or 6 or 8 dozen eggs on a given, on a busy day. And, we're only able to buy eggs, 1 dozen at a time because eggs have been a difficult commodity. And, we've just been advised that hamburger patties and hot dogs are going to be the next thing.
Wow.
And so we're trying to plan our procurement in such a way that we have storage space to store enough that we can make it through any gaps that come. Mm-hmm. And then, trying to stay open, you have to be constantly sanitizing things. And if you've tried to buy Lysol or any of those products, you know that it's difficult to come by that stuff. And in the quantities that we use it in, it's a challenge, and so we've had to go outside to other chemical companies and buy sanitizer that we wouldn't normally use, but we've had to adapt it to our purpose. And then on the flip side of that, assuming we're going forward like this, eventually I'd like to open my go-kart tracks, and I know that I'm going to be required to sanitize each and every go-kart in between each ride cycle. So every time somebody gets out of a cart before somebody else can get into one, I have to sanitize it.
Wow.
And so I've had to buy the equipment to do that, and then find a sanitizer. Things I never thought I'd need to know is, how fast does a sanitizer actually sanitize?
Right.
And there are some that take up to an hour. They have to remain on the surface for up to an hour to sanitize it.
Wow.
And so I had to work to find a sanitizer that would sanitize and not be harmful to humans in a very short amount of time. So I've managed to find one that's FDA approved, and it sanitizes to 99.99 in 2 minutes. So that's a really quick sanitizer. And I think I'm like everybody else. I never knew that sanitizers had an amount of time that they had to be on the surface to work. You can't just spray it on and wipe it off and consider it sanitized. So those have been kind of the biggest challenges for us as a business is how to stay open when we couldn't find sanitizer, and how to open up more as the government relaxes the constraints. How do we do that and stay in compliance,
Well, that's a lot. I mean, that's a lot to do. That's a lot, for you as a business owner to, you weren't prepared to do that. Probably a lot of people were not, but God definitely is making a way for you and your business. And I know you always have a packed list of activities on your weekend schedule. I know you have since you've been out there. And I notice on your website several, of course, had to be canceled. So as far as your events and activities, are you thinking about just waiting until next year, or do you think some of them will go on, or what do you see happening?
Well, that's maybe the most troublesome thing is, of course, we know that one of the reasons why people come out here and stay with us is because of the really fun activities that we have, and we have them packed throughout the season. Some, I think, 22 or 23 events throughout the season. And with COVID, you have to be obviously conscious of, are you encouraging gatherings and things like that. So we have had to cancel, like you said, all of our events to this point. But what we're doing is, because the situation is so changeable with the government regulations, we're waiting just as long as we can prior to canceling anything, because we don't know what the next report from the governor is going to be. And it's unfortunate that we don't have any guidance other than divine guidance on this, and what I've said 100 times is, what hasn't been canceled is hope.
Mm-hmm.
And so, right now we have hope, and we have hope that God knows the plan, and that we're not canceling anything until we bump right into it and decide that we can't do it. And so we're advising everyone that holds events here, as well as our internal events, we're just going to wait and, not completely give up on it, because I've got a lot of hope and faith that God's going to see us through this, and we're going to be fine, and that He is guiding the hands of the governmental leaders, and we'll get this thing going. And so we're putting everything on hold until it comes up on the calendar, and then handling each one. Now our mud run, the rugged race, has been canceled because the sponsorships and all of that is very problematic at this time. Mm-hmm. And so they've canceled to 2021. That one we haven't announced that it's canceled, but I guess this is the announcement.
Okay.
But we'll just see. Each event stands on its own, and we'll cancel it or hold it depending on what God sees fit for us.
Okay. The good news is you have fish, right?
Oh my gosh, do we have fish? Yes.
How many? You've got lots of fish.
Yes, we're stocking with 500 pounds of fish a week.
Wow.
And this weekend we're going to double that and put 1,000 pounds of fish in, which is just about elbow room in our pay lake.
Oh my goodness.
And the pay lake is seeing record numbers also. So, feel free to come out and drop a line. Of course, our pay lake, we have to charge for it, but somebody's got to pay for the fish.
That's right.
And so, but we are putting a ton, almost literally a ton of fish in the lake. And people are limiting out left and right. It's been good for the fishing.
And that's a lot of fun. Fishing is also relaxing. It's so good for the brain. We're going to take a break, okay, Brian? We're going to be right back with more Shaped by Faith, so everyone stay tuned. Welcome back to Shape by Faith, where we shape our bodies and hearts for God's purposes. On the phone is Brian Smith. He is the owner of Diamond Lake Resort. And we were talking about, towards the end of the last segment, Brian, you've got a lot of fish. You've got 500 pounds. You've got almost a ton of fish. So we want to encourage people to go out to Diamond Lake Resort and fish, right?
Right. It's one of the things we haven't had to stop.
And it's a fun activity. Brian, how has God equipped you to handle all these changes that are going on? How has He sustained you? And what have you learned through all of this? What is He teaching you?
Well, I'm fairly young in my journey with God, and so I'm learning all the time and every day. And I think with the pandemic and the challenges that it's presented me, it's taught me to just be patient and to just turn it over to God and just allow God to work and not try to put God into your time frame.
That's good.
Just allow Him in and be patient while He works, because at the darkest hour, Janice and I, and Janice has tremendous faith also, and throughout these times, we have looked at each other and said, we don't know what we're going to do, and it's ironic, but we will both come together again later on. We'll both say that we've been praying about it, and it's really interesting how that just works. It's not always in your face, and I rarely hear God speak to me, but He speaks through His works, and it's just a wonderful thing to just let it go and turn it over to God. And that's probably the biggest lesson, but it comes very difficult. It's just really difficult to be that way.
Yes.
And I totally understand the difficulty that people have letting that happen. But gosh, it just bears so much fruit, and that's probably been the one thing that I've learned.
That's awesome. And letting go and let God be God, and let us be in tune with Him. And praying is like the healing balm to the soul. You may not think that things are going to change up, but there's a change of heart. And that's what's most important. And listening to God, being obedient to Him, and let Him do what only He can do, and putting out your faith there, just putting it out and trusting God. That is hard, Brian. It's hard to do, but with God, we can do it. How can we support your business?
Oh my gosh. It's been such a blessing, but you can find us on Facebook at Diamond Lake Resort. You can find us on the internet at diamondlakeresort.net, not .com, but .net. Okay. And we also have an Instagram present at Diamond Lake Resort. And or you can give us a call at 270-229-4900. Come out. You don't have to stay with us. You don't have to stay with us. That's the biggest message I would put forth. Just come out, be calm, have fun, spend some time communing with nature. The baby ducks are out, the baby geese are out. You can feed the fish. You can do whatever you want. It's open to the public. There's no admission charge. So just come on out, enjoy the day. And if you see me wandering around, say hi and introduce yourself.
Okay. Brian, thank you so much for being a guest on Shape by Faith. I always enjoy our conversation.
Me too. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And thank you for listening. I'm Theresa Rowe. Everyone have a blessed day. Bye.